joining in with us here with a quick word with Pastor Chad. Listen, as always, I want to just give you a quick and simple word, around 5 minutes or less, just to help you as you do life. And listen, I want to talk to you just a little while today from the subject, when you're down to nothing, God is up to something. And I want to share a scripture with you, Isaiah chapter 6, and I'm going to use verse 1, just simply one verse. And it says, "In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple." Now, when you're down to nothing, God is up to something. You know, have you ever had a storm in your life? Listen, there are storms that come that leave a mark. You know, when a little thundercloud rolls through your life or rolls through a day, you don't name that storm. But when a storm picks up a certain veracity, when the winds are so strong, when the damage is so great that meteorologists classify that as a certain type of storm, and they give it a name, Hugo, Katrina, you name it, because the storm has reached a certain level. And I want you to know that Isaiah was in a storm. And the name of his storm was in the year King Uzziah died. And listen, you probably can relate. You know, we just came out of 2020, and a lot of people say that was one of the worst years they ever had. But whatever your year was, it could be the year you lost your mother, lost your father, lost your job, your health declined. You can say, just like Isaiah, in the year I lost my mother, in the year I lost my father, in that year I lost my job, I lost my home, I lost my child. And that's your name of your storm. That's the storm that you can name. And Isaiah said, in that year that King Uzziah died, when I was down to my worst, when I was down to nothing, God was up to something. See, in that year, that ain't all that happened. He said, in that same terrible year, I saw the Lord. Listen, there's a novel called A Tale of Two Cities. And it starts out, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. You know, Isaiah could have used that tagline for his story, because what he's saying is, in that year when my life was decimated, when I lost a great friend and king in my life, and my career was uncertain, in that same year, I saw something else. I saw more than my pain, more than my limitations. I saw the Lord high and lifted up. In other words, he said, I realized that when I was down to nothing, I saw that God was up to something. And I want to speak that into your life today, that when you are down to nothing, when your back is against the wall, know this. He said he'll never leave you nor forsake you. Sometimes God got to let some things die in your life in order for you to be able to see him for who he is. I'm not necessarily talking about a loved one, but sometimes he has to let your career die in order for you to realize where your help come from. Sometimes he has to let your health decline in order for you to realize that all of my help comes from the Lord. In the year that King Uzziah died, in the year that I lost my mother, my father, in the year that they laid me off, I saw God like I never had before. And see, Isaiah, he saw the Lord. He was a person that was a believer. But it's something about a storm that clears the air. If you ever had gone out after a storm, the air is so clear. I remember back in the day when I was coming up, and we'd have our little radio, and it wouldn't reach very far. But after a storm, we could always pick up more stations. Why? Because the storm had cleared the air. And what I'm telling you right now is whatever your storm is that you can name, whatever you've been through when you were down to nothing, God was up to something. And now that you have gone through your storm, you can pick up channels that you couldn't pick up before, because the storm has cleared the air, has cleared the atmosphere, that you can also say, in that same year I got laid off, I saw the Lord. In the same year I buried my mother, I saw the Lord. In the same year my health began to decline, I saw the Lord like I never saw him before. When you're down to nothing, God is up to something.